Have you ever wondered why you've always felt different, like you were born into a world that never quite understood you? That quiet feeling that something about your life didn't add up, that maybe you were made for more than what you've been shown. It wasn't your imagination. That pull in your spirit was real. The restlessness in your soul was a signal. They've kept something from you, a truth so powerful it could have changed everything. But it wasn't convenient for the world to let you know who you really are. So they distracted you, lied to you, made you doubt yourself. And while you were busy trying to fit in, they were trying to make you forget. But the truth never left you. That voice that whispered to you in the silence, that presence you felt during your darkest nights, it never stopped calling. And now, the veil is lifting. You're starting to remember. You're not just another person drifting through life. You've been marked since birth, set apart, chosen, not by chance, but by divine design. There's a reason you've survived what others didn't. A reason you've carried so much pain, so much awareness, so much depth. Your life was never meant to be ordinary. You were born to awaken. And now, you are. From your earliest memories, there were signs. The way you could sense what others were feeling without them saying a word. The way you could walk into a room and feel the energy shift. The way the world felt heavier for you than it did for others. They told you you were too sensitive, too quiet, too emotional. But all along, what they called weakness was the evidence of your calling. You weren't meant to be numb. You were meant to feel, to see, to know, to carry what others couldn't. That was the first sign of who you truly are. But they didn't want you to know that. The world teaches you to chase what doesn't matter, so you forget what does. It gives you roles, labels, and routines. Anything to keep you from discovering your purpose. And for a while, you played along. You followed the script. You tried to become what they told you to be. But no matter how hard you tried, you couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing, that you were missing. Because deep within, your soul remembered what your mind had forgotten. And that memory has been trying to wake you up ever since. You see, the moment a chosen one is born, the opposition begins. Not because you are weak, but because you are dangerous. To darkness. The light within you, even before you knew how to use it, threatened everything built on fear. That's why life hit you hard. That's why you went through storms before you had words to describe them. That's why people tried to break your spirit before you even knew you had one. But despite it all, you're still standing. Bruised maybe, tired, yes, but still here. And that's the proof. The calling over your life is stronger than anything that came against it. You were chosen before they ever tried to stop you. And now, you're remembering why. You didn't fit in because you weren't meant to. You questioned everything because truth was wired into your spirit. You saw through the lies, the masks, the empty pursuits. And for that, they called you different. They labeled you rebellious, complicated, intense. But the truth is, your soul just refused to settle for less than what it was created for. And that refusal, that fire, is what's bringing you back to your purpose. There's something powerful about being chosen. But what they don't tell you is that it doesn't start with glory. It starts with isolation, with rejection, with feeling like no one sees you, like no one understands you. And for a while, you start to believe maybe they're right. Maybe you really are too much. Maybe there's something wrong with you. But then something shifts. Something inside you says, no, this isn't where your story ends. This isn't all there is. And that voice, the one that's been whispering all your life, starts to grow louder. You don't need permission to become who you were always meant to be. You just need the courage to remember. There was never anything wrong with you. Your depth, your hunger for truth, your longing for something real, those were never flaws. They were clues, evidence, signs pointing you back to your origin. And every time the world pushed you down, heaven was pulling you closer. Every time someone left you, it was making space for something greater. And every time you thought it was over, a new door quietly opened. The reason it felt like life was against you is because you were being shaped, refined, prepared. The pain wasn't punishment, it was positioning. You've always known, haven't you? Even in your silence, even when you doubted, something in you never gave up, because something in you couldn't. That something is the truth, that you were chosen, that your life is not random, that every scar is sacred, that every detour had purpose, and that the very thing they tried to suppress in you is the very thing that is rising now. This is your remembering, and this is just the beginning. You've heard it your whole life. Be realistic, stay quiet, don't question too much, just follow the rules. But something in you refused to listen. You always felt like you were here to do more than just exist, more than just survive the day-to-day. Deep down, you felt a pull towards something higher, something greater, something sacred. It was never about fame or recognition. It was about truth, purpose, a deeper knowing that your life wasn't random. You've sensed the call for years, even if you couldn't explain it. It would show up in strange ways, a moment of stillness that felt divine, a sudden thought that didn't feel like your own, an internal whisper repeating again and again, "There is more," and there is. But you weren't meant to discover it all at once. Your journey was designed in stages, and the calling you felt is only the beginning. There were moments, maybe when you were alone, maybe when everything around you was falling apart, when you felt something supernatural holding you together, a peace that didn't match the chaos, a strength you couldn't trace to anything external. That was God, not as a distant figure in the sky, but as a constant presence within you, calling you higher. And yet, the world tried to drown that voice. Every distraction, every disappointment, every delay was an attempt to disconnect you from that divine frequency. But it didn't work, because no matter how far you drifted, that calling never stopped. And it's growing louder now, because the world needs what you carry. But here's what most people won't tell you. Carrying a divine calling isn't glamorous. It's not loud, it's not easy. It comes with weight. It comes with warfare. It comes with seasons of being misunderstood, misjudged, and mislabeled. People may say, "You've changed, you've become distant," but they don't understand what's happening. They don't see the spiritual battles you've been fighting in silence. They don't know what it's like to carry vision in a world that's blind. They don't realize that every quiet moment of isolation has been your preparation. Because before God reveals a calling publicly, He refines it privately. And that's what's been happening to you. You've been called to something greater, and that means you've had to walk through things that others couldn't survive. You've had to wrestle with purpose in the midnight hours, cry prayers that words couldn't express, and stand firm when your legs felt like they'd give out. You've been chosen, but the world tried to convince you that you were cursed. It tried to convince you that your pain was pointless, that your gifts were burdens, that your heart was too much. But everything about you, the sensitivity, the depth, the hunger for more, it was all placed inside you by design. Nothing was an accident. And now, your calling is unfolding. And what the world tried to suppress, God is about to reveal. You've probably noticed something else about yourself. You feel what others don't. You see what they miss. You carry burdens that no one asked you to carry, and yet you still do it. You love when it's not returned. You give when it's not appreciated. You pour out when your own cup is nearly empty. And people have told you over and over again, you're too sensitive, you care too much. But what they call sensitivity is really divine empathy. It's a spiritual gift, one that this world desperately needs. You don't just sympathize with people, you absorb their pain. You understand their wounds. You see beneath the surface. And that's not a weakness. That's a calling. God gave you that empathy so you could be a light in dark places. So you could walk into a room and shift the atmosphere without saying a word. So you could speak life into people who have forgotten how to hope. Your heart wasn't made to be guarded and cold. It was made to be open, compassionate, and full of grace. But being a carrier of God's heart in a world so wounded means you'll often feel like you're bleeding in silence. You'll carry the emotions of others without anyone noticing. You'll grieve for people you've never met. You'll feel everything deeply, and sometimes you won't know why. That's because your spirit is tuned to a frequency most people can't hear. And yes, it gets heavy. There are days when the weight of the world feels like too much. When you wonder if anyone sees how much you give, how much you carry, how much you feel. But God sees. Every time you showed kindness when you were hurting. Every time you forgave when you didn't receive an apology. Every time you loved harder when it would have been easier to walk away. These aren't small acts. These are signs of divine power at work within you. You were chosen to feel, to heal, and to help. And while the world may never fully understand the depth of your compassion, heaven does. And in due time, the love you've sown will return to you in ways beyond what you can imagine. There's another way God speaks to the chosen ones, through dreams. Not just regular dreams, but those unforgettable ones. The ones that feel more real than reality. The ones that stay with you for days, weeks, even years. You wake up with your heart racing, your spirit stirred, like you've seen something sacred. And maybe you have. You've probably had dreams that felt like warnings. Dreams that gave you clarity. Dreams that told you something was about to shift. And maybe you shrugged them off. Maybe people told you they were just dreams. But deep down, you knew better. Because your dreams don't feel like fantasy. They feel like prophecy. Since ancient times, God has used dreams to speak to His chosen, to reveal truth, to send direction, to prepare hearts. Joseph in the Bible saw his future long before it happened, and he was mocked for it, disbelieved, betrayed. But everything he saw came to pass. And what if the same is true for you? What if your dreams, the ones that seemed too big, too wild, too strange, were never meant to be ignored? What if they were messages, blueprints, visions from a place beyond time, pulling you into your destiny? Sometimes, dreams come to give you answers, when the noise of the world is too loud. When you can't hear the voice of God in your day-to-day, He'll speak through the stillness of night. And sometimes, the dreams don't make sense, at least not yet. But chosen ones don't receive ordinary messages. They receive revelation. And revelation takes time to unfold. That dream you had years ago that you can't forget. The one that haunts you in a holy way. It wasn't just your mind wandering. It was your spirit remembering. You've always known that you were here for something more. And now, piece by piece, that truth is coming together. The calling you felt, the empathy you've carried, the dreams that refuse to fade. They're all part of a bigger plan. You haven't missed your moment. You're not too late. You're not imagining things. You're awakening. And once your eyes are open, they can never be closed again. The road ahead won't always be easy, but it will be worth it. Because now you know the truth. You are chosen. You are called. You are being prepared. And what's coming is greater than anything that's been. Keep walking. Keep trusting. You're closer than you think. There are moments in your life that defy logic. Times when you were sure everything would fall apart. When all the odds were against you. When you should have been broken beyond repair. And yet somehow, you made it through. Maybe it didn't make sense at the time. Maybe it still doesn't. But there you were, standing on the other side of something that should have destroyed you. That wasn't luck. That wasn't coincidence. That was protection. divine protection. A hand you couldn't see, guiding you. A voice you couldn't hear, redirecting you. A shield you didn't recognize, covering you in silence. And while others might call it chance, you know better. You've always known that something, or someone, has been looking out for you since the beginning. There were times you missed the wrong place by seconds. Times when you were delayed, detoured, distracted. And only later did you realize that delay was your deliverance. There were situations you entered and somehow walked out of untouched, while others around you weren't so fortunate. You've had things taken from you, relationships, jobs, plans, and you felt like life was falling apart. But looking back, you realize that rejection was a rescue. That closed door saved your life. That person who left, their absence made room for your elevation. Every time you thought you were being punished, you were actually being protected. You just didn't know it yet. You've been covered, even when you didn't ask for it, even when you didn't deserve it, even when you were drifting far from your purpose. That's the mark of the chosen. God protects what He plans to use. You weren't spared because you were perfect. You were spared because your assignment is not finished. There's something on your life that hell itself couldn't stop. That's why you've made it through storms that others drowned in. That's why you've healed from wounds that should have left you bitter. That's why, even when everything around you was collapsing, something inside you said, keep going. And let's be honest, there were moments you felt completely alone, like no one saw you, like no one cared. But the truth is, you've never walked a single step by yourself. In your quietest heartbreaks, in your most painful losses, you were being held. You just couldn't see it. Sometimes God protects you in the fire, and sometimes He protects you from the fire. But either way, you survive. And not just survive, you learn, you grow, you evolve. You become stronger, wiser, more aligned with who you truly are. Every near miss, every escape, every miracle that no one else knew about, it was all part of the divine orchestration over your life. Because chosen ones don't live normal lives. You were never meant to. Your journey was never meant to look like theirs. So you can't compare it. You can't explain it. You can only trust it. And that trust, faith in what you can't see, that's what carries you through. You've been protected from things you didn't even know were trying to destroy you. People who smiled in your face but carried knives behind their backs. Opportunities that looked like blessings, but were really traps. You were about to step into disaster, but God stepped in first. And sometimes He protects you by removing things you begged Him to keep. It doesn't always feel like love, but it is. And one day, you'll see just how many times you were saved without ever realizing it. But protection doesn't mean comfort. It doesn't mean you won't be stretched, tested, challenged. It means that no matter what comes against you, it will not prevail. The weapon may form, but it won't prosper. That's the difference between someone who is chosen and someone who is simply surviving. The chosen are refined, not destroyed. Molded, not broken. The fire that was meant to consume you only revealed your strength. And now, here you are, carrying stories of survival, miracles wrapped in silence, strength you never knew you had. Not because you figured it all out, but because you were protected by grace. And still, even with all that protection, all those miracles, you've often felt like you don't belong. Like no matter where you go, something about you always stands out, even when you try to blend in. You've been in rooms that felt foreign, conversations that felt shallow, relationships that felt misaligned. It's not because you're flawed, it's because you're set apart. You've been marked since birth, not for popularity, not for comfort, but for purpose. And that purpose doesn't allow you to live like everyone else. That's why you've never truly fit in. Even as a child, you probably felt it. That distance, that invisible barrier. that strange sense that you were living in a world that wasn't speaking your language. While others found comfort in conformity, you were drawn to the unknown, to the spiritual, to the sacred. You asked questions that made others uncomfortable. You noticed things they ignored. You sensed what they couldn't. And for a long time, that made you feel like something was wrong with you. But now you're beginning to understand. It wasn't a defect. It was design. You were never supposed to be like them. You weren't made to follow trends, mimic crowds, or chase empty validation. Your spirit came here with a mission, and that mission required you to walk alone at times, to feel misunderstood, to be the outsider. But being an outsider gave you sight. It gave you perspective. It taught you how to stand when it's easier to sit, how to speak truth when silence would be safer. It taught you how to hear your own voice in a world that tries to drown it out. That's what being chosen does. It forces you to see beyond the surface. You've probably wondered why you connect so deeply with certain stories, why the life of Joseph or David or Esther resonates with you in a way you can't explain. It's because their story echoes yours. Each of them was overlooked, underestimated, and pushed aside, but they were being positioned. Their separation wasn't punishment, it was preparation, and so was yours. You were being set apart, not rejected, elevated, not excluded. And now, the pieces are coming together. What once felt like isolation is now beginning to look like alignment. What once felt like loss is starting to feel like strategy. Because the more you grow, the more you realize you were never abandoned. You were being hidden on purpose. When God sets someone apart, He often does it in silence. He removes them from the crowd, strips them of false identities, breaks their attachment to approval. And it hurts. It's confusing, but it's necessary. Because you cannot carry your calling and your comfort at the same time. You have to choose. And whether you realized it or not, your soul already chose. That's why you've always felt the tension, the longing, the ache for something more. You've been chosen. And chosen ones can't settle for less, not because they're better, but because they're built differently. Your spirit knows, even when your mind forgets, even when your emotions get tired. You've always had a knowing, and that knowing is what kept you going when everything else said stop. It's what pulled you through every season of silence, every year of waiting, every moment of doubt. Because the one thing you've never been able to do is quit. That's not weakness. That's proof. Proof that no matter how out of place you feel in this world, you are exactly where you're meant to be in the story God is writing. You are chosen. You are protected. You are set apart. And you're just getting started. You've always carried questions others were afraid to ask. Even before you had the words, you felt the weight of the unknown pressing on your spirit. While others were content with surface-level answers, you were restless, always searching for something more meaning, more truth, more connection. That longing, that hunger for something beyond what the eye can see, wasn't a phase. It wasn't rebellion. It was a divine signal placed in your soul before you even arrived here, because those who are chosen often carry within them a sacred curiosity, a deep, relentless desire to uncover what's been hidden. And the more they seek, the more is revealed. You probably noticed it young. While others were drawn to simple distractions, you were drawn to questions no one seemed to have answers for. You didn't just want to know what, you wanted to know why. Why was the world the way it was? Why did pain exist? Why could you sense things other people couldn't? Why did your heart break over things others didn't even notice? It wasn't just intellectual curiosity, it was spiritual thirst. Your soul was tuned to something eternal. And even when life tried to numb you, that desire never fully left. Because it couldn't. It was part of who you are. And maybe that made you feel different. Misunderstood. You spoke truths people weren't ready to hear. You saw through illusions they were still clinging to. You questioned the systems they worshipped. And because of that, they pushed back. They called you a skeptic, too intense, too deep. But the truth is, you were just awake. And the closer you got to truth, the more resistance you faced. Because this world has been built to keep chosen ones distracted, to drown their curiosity in noise, to make them second-guess what they know in their bones. But your spirit refused to settle, because it was never meant to. You've always felt like you were searching for something just out of reach, like there was a door hidden in plain sight, and you were the only one who knew it existed. That feeling wasn't random. It was an invitation. The more you searched, the more patterns began to emerge. The more you questioned, the more aligned your path became. Because when a chosen one seeks truth, truth begins to seek them back. The books that found you at just the right time, the messages that hit your spirit like lightning, the people you encountered who seemed sent from above. It was all connected. And now, you're starting to see the bigger picture. The search itself has been sacred, because with every answer you've received, a new layer of your purpose has been revealed. You weren't just asking questions for knowledge. You were asking because your calling is tied to what you uncover. Every insight you receive, every revelation that stirs your soul, is a key to unlocking who you truly are. You're not just meant to carry wisdom. You're meant to live it, to embody it, to walk in it with such clarity that others begin to remember who they are simply by watching you. But that level of understanding doesn't come without cost. The deeper you've gone, the lonelier it's felt. Because truth isolates before it elevates. You've had to walk away from people who once felt like home, not because they were bad, but because they couldn't go where you were being led. You've outgrown environments, conversations, even parts of yourself. And it's been painful, but necessary, because the more you shed, the more your light expands. You're not just on a journey of discovery, you're on a journey of becoming. And what you're becoming is powerful, wise, unshakable. You're stepping into a season where what once confused you now makes sense. What once felt like chaos is now being revealed as preparation. The confusion is lifting, the clarity is coming, and the truths you've uncovered along the way are shaping you into someone the world desperately needs. Because this world doesn't just need more knowledge, it needs more light, more love, more wisdom wrapped in compassion. And that's exactly what you're here to bring. And now the moment is arriving where everything begins to align. You've been searching, growing, shedding, and remembering. And all of it has been leading you here, to the reveal, to the unveiling, to the moment when your inner knowing becomes outer reality. You're no longer just hoping you have a purpose. You know you do. You're no longer asking if you're different. You know you are. And now you understand why. Every wound, every delay, every unanswered prayer was shaping something holy inside you. Something that's now ready to be seen. You are not here by accident. Your gifts were not a mistake. The way your mind works, the way your heart feels, the way your spirit responds to things others ignore. All of it was intentional. You were crafted by a divine hand, not just to live, but to awaken, to rise, to remember. And now, the season of remembering is shifting into the season of becoming. You're not just the seeker anymore. You're the revealer, the guide, the one who walks in what others are still trying to understand. It's time to stop apologizing for who you are. Time to stop shrinking to fit spaces you've outgrown. Time to stop doubting the call that's been echoing in your chest for years. You're not here to blend in. You're here to disrupt the patterns of darkness with the light you carry. You're not here to wait for permission. You're here to walk in divine authority. You're not here to question your worth. You're here to live out your purpose with boldness and grace. Everything in your life has been preparing you for this. The silence, the heartbreak, the seeking, the sacred loneliness. None of it was wasted. It was all working together to bring you back to yourself. The self that was chosen, the self that was anointed, the self that is rising now. You may not have all the answers yet, but you have enough to move forward. You have enough to take the next step. And as you do, more will be revealed. Because this is what happens when chosen ones remember who they are. The world begins to shift, and the light that was once hidden begins to shine. You were never meant to live a quiet, hidden life forever. The time of hiding is over. The time of becoming is here. And now, everything that's been inside of you is ready to be seen. Your light, your wisdom, your truth. It's time, and you are ready.